That's this session. As you've just gotten a notice, we are recording. I want to thank everyone for being here. I know there are many things that you could be doing, and your commitment to active transportation on a beautiful spring day is admirable. I'm looking forward to a great session with you all. My name is Sarah Iannaro. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the executive director with the Street Trust. And this is the 10th anniversary of the Oregon Active Transportation Summit. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that the land that I am presently occupying here in Portland in the metro area rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalipua, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River, and wanted to take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land. As I said, this is adapting commuter programs during and after COVID. Your presenters today are Maddie Billings, Sydney Herbst, Julia Woolley, Kim Curley, and Adam Gomez. You can type your questions into the chat or use the hand raise tool, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. We encourage you to engage on social media throughout the conference using the hashtag OATS21. Post your favorite moments from the summit, questions, concerns, connect with your fellow attendees. And please don't forget to visit our website at thestreettrust.org to learn more about our other programs and activities. When we're not busy hosting the Active Transportation Summit, we're doing things like promoting Senate Bill 395, also known as Safe Routes for All, which is an update to the historic bike bill on its 50th anniversary. And it's moving its way through the Oregon legislature this session to increase investments for people walking, biking, and rolling in Oregon. To claim AICP credit for attending this session, please log into the OATS SCED platform and find the AICP certificate download link near the top of the page. Now, without further delay, welcome our presenters. Thank you so much for being here today. We're happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that introduction and acknowledgement. We will go ahead and get started. Everyone should have a poll up on their screen that you can feel free to go ahead and fill that out. And we'll get our slides up in just a moment here. Okay, welcome to Adapting Commuter Programs During and After COVID-19. We'll do some quick introductions and then we'll go ahead and get started with that polling question. I'm Maddie Billings. I'm with Westside Transportation Alliance here in Washington County, Oregon. I am the Communication and Program Coordinator. Very happy to be here with you today.
I'm Sydney Herbst, and I'm a program specialist at Alta Planning and Design, and I am based in Portland. And I'll pass it to Kim.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Curley. I work for a nonprofit called Commute Options. We're based in Bend, and we serve 17 Central and Eastern Oregon counties.
I can go next. I'm Julia Woolley. I'm a transportation options marketing specialist at Lane Transit District. We're located in the Eugene Springfield area. I'll pass it to Adam.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam Gomez, not Kim Curley as it says on my screen, but I work for Rogue Valley Transportation District in Southern Oregon. I work on passenger programs in TDM. I'll hand it off back to Maddie, I believe.
Great, thank you everyone for introducing yourselves. Now we're going to focus on that polling question really quick. We asked you over the past year, where have you primarily worked? These are the 5 questions you'll be seeing answers. And let me see. We'll shrink this real quick and see what the answers are collectively. Okay, sorry about that, one moment. We'll stop the share real quick so we can see those answers. All right, so it looks like we're seeing about 57% exclusively telework over these last 6 to 8 months, approximately a year. And we have about 33% primarily telework with occasionally at the work site. And 5 and 5%, we have it exclusively at the work site, primarily at the work site, and 0 for 50-50. So that's some interesting results that we should keep in mind as we move forward through our presentation. Thank you everyone for filling that out. I'll return to that shared screen. And we can keep going. It'll let me change the page. Okay, so first things first, we started with going virtual.
And I'll also kick that one off. So here at Commute Options, we have a product for drivers, which helps them learn safer ways to interact with people walking and rolling on the street. In the olden days before COVID, we used to have pizza and iced tea and all get together in a conference room with a live presenter and a slideshow. And in 2020, we created 2 virtual delivery systems for this program. So it is still 75 minutes. And now you can do a team training option where you get your lunch and learn going with your virtual staff and watch a live webinar with live Q&A. And then we also offer a completely online course where you take the pre-test and the post-test and watch all of the material in the middle. It's super great for insomniacs because at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can get on there and learn how to be a friendly driver, and it just doesn't even cost anything. So we're pretty excited that we've made that program a little bit more accessible at times of day and also in in COVID.
Great, and on that note, sorry about that. We have also here at WTA, with this mass shift to telework that we've seen, we have been switching to digital incentives rather than the type that you might send in the mail, in the snail mail. And WTA's Commuter Kickbacks monthly commuter rewards program has shifted mainly to these digital prizes. Commute Options, as Kim was just talking about, has similarly utilized recently the Tango card, which gives the user or the winner of a program choices between certain big box stores like Amazon, Target for an e-gift card reward. And similarly at WTA, we have switched to an e-gift card platform that is provided by the Square company called Give and Get Local, where users can search by area and select an e-gift card from a local business of their choice. So when it comes to incentives, we've really learned that program participants, they really appreciate options, and going digital has made that something that's feasible. Plus, these options also help us ensure that winners receive a prize that they actually want and are actually able to use, like it's a store that they can access, for example.
All right, and this is Sydney here with Alta. I help manage Get There Oregon, which is, for those who don't know, a statewide ride matching and trip planning tool, which is funded by ODOT. And it's powered by a third-party vendor called Ride Amigos. And every year we host the Get There Challenge. And during the Get There Challenge, participants log trips, walking, biking, carpooling, transit, etc., for the chance to win prizes. And a little over a year ago in March, we had just started planning for the Get There Challenge, the 2020 Get There Challenge. And we kind of put the brakes on that when everything was happening. And we realized obviously fewer people were taking these trips. A lot of people were working from home and also just facing significant life changes. So we decided to kind of reevaluate and try something new since it was a very unusual year. And so we worked with Right Amigos to develop 20 custom achievements, which you can kind of get a sample of on the slide there. And these achievements could be completed from the comfort of people's homes. They still encourage people to learn about their transportation options and log trips if they were able to do so, but it just opened up the doors for people who didn't feel safe and comfortable making trips on transit or by carpooling and stuff like that. So some of these achievements included like sharing a story, a commute story, making a pledge, or looking at some sort of transportation resource and then taking a short quiz, and participants could earn points the same way that they normally do and have the chance to win prizes.
By the way, the 2021 Get There Challenge is October 4th through 17th. If you would like to mark your calendars to participate, it's gonna be great prizes this year. So as stated, yes, about a year or so ago, we all got our papers to quit coming to the office and get your laptop ready and maybe make a stand-up desk out of your bookcase and try to get your kids and your dogs and your Wi-Fi all set up so you could work at home. And for me, that was fine because I'm a 10-year plus teleworker. I have a stand-up desk and all my gear. But for some, it was very shocking and disturbing and hard, and people didn't like it. And you know, none of us like to be told what we have to do. And what we had to do last year was, you know, totally change the way we went to work. So we wanted to put a smiley face on the end of that whole phrase for folks in our Get There network. And so we invented Telework perks. Not only can you drink coffee at any time when you work from home, but you could also win prizes from local businesses, Tango card, like Maddie was talking about, and our grand prize winners got AirPods or Google Pixel Buds. So we were hoping that that technology tool would help make people's work life a little easier from home.
Yeah, and just like Kim and others on this call, part of what we do is you know, encourage people to walk, bike, carpool, or of course take the bus. I work for a trans agency, and with the start of the pandemic, a lot of that shifted. You know, with capacity requirements on our buses, we were really trying to reserve those spaces for people that were essential workers or people that need to make essential trips. So what this opened up is that great experiment in teleworking. And teleworking was the one option that I felt like through my work, I had the least leverage in encouraging employers to participate in. And again, through the pandemic, we had this huge experiment in teleworking. So what we quickly developed was a page and resources that we shared with our employer partners to help them smooth over the telework arrangements with their employers. So what we did is, of course, we worked with ODOT and with my other colleagues across the state, all to put together this great telework reference guide that had information for both employers and employees that we shared with our partners. But we also did is work with our employer network. So our larger employers like SAU, Asante, which is a large hospital network in Southern Oregon, and Providence, another hospital network, is we shared resources, everything from telework, work agreements, arrangements, guidelines, policies, so we can kind of make it easier for everyone to implement these arrangements, and also hopefully keep them long-term if they're of interest to the employer and the employee. What we started doing at the end of summer and the beginning of fall is employee surveying. And through the surveying, we found out that for the Asante folks and for some of the other larger employers, about 80 to 85% of their employees wanted to continue teleworking even after the end of the pandemic. So right now we're working on ways we can help encourage those arrangements if they're beneficial to the employer and the employee. And this kind of leads me back to conversation I remember having with Kim earlier or last year, that the teleworking we've been doing during the pandemic. It's not normal. I know Kim has been teleworking for years, but there's all these added stresses of having to teach your kids at home, dealing with a global pandemic, and all these other kind of stressors. So for the folks that are interested in continuing, we're trying to kind of support them and offer them resources to see if this can be a longer term arrangement with our employer programs.
All right. So as I mentioned before, we had to adapt the Get There Challenge, but we also use this as an opportunity to promote telework by including a number of telework focused achievements. So some of those included logging telework trips. People could get 5 points for each milestone. So if they logged 1, 5, 10, 15, or 20 trips. We had a form where people could share their home office. So they filled out the form, told us what they liked most about their home office, and sent us a photo. So we received a lot of pet photos, which was fun for me, at least, because I got to go through all of them. And it was also great content to use in the future on Get Their social media. So we're continuing to pull those stories, which is great. We had to become a remote work pro achievement where people could watch a remote work tips video and then take a short quiz. And then as you can see on the slide there, that was our live Zoom cast where we had our presenting sponsor was Comcast Business, and we had a Comcast expert come in and give tips for optimizing Wi-Fi. So we had around 100 attendees participate in that and watch the Zoomcast, and we got some really positive feedback. And then people could also watch it later and still unlock the achievement. So we're actually hoping to do something like that again this year for the challenge.
All right, hi, this is Julia, Lane Transit District. Sydney, I was in that workshop, and after that I bought a new router and modem, so well done. So a piece of what we do, like Sydney mentioned, is outreach and education through our social media outlets. And like I think most of us on this virtual stage, we increased the portion of our social media content that focused on the unique concerns of teleworkers following this massive shift for a good portion of people to working remotely, particularly those who had been kind of thrust into this with no prior preparation. So that would be most of us, not the Kims, but the most of us. So the telework specific content that we created has addressed all kinds of topics ranging from like improving your office ergonomics to maintaining work-life boundaries. And what we've aimed to do is balance content which addresses the challenges and the drawbacks of telework, especially those that are unique to this situation, like Adam was saying, with its obvious benefits like decreased to zero time commuting, increased flexibility, ability to wear pajamas, things like that. And so we sought to balance this in order to achieve two goals. So one is we want to promote telework as an attractive and viable SOB option, non-SOB option, post-pandemic, when employees might have a greater choice in terms of what they want to continue doing for their commute. But also we wanted to be able to provide support for those who were teleworking to make sure that it actually can be a sustainable commute option for them and they don't just burn out on it and hate it after a year, both in terms of your productivity and your personal well-being. So I think that this balance between promotion and support, that's also something that Sydney will talk about a little bit later, I believe, with the content they've done for Get There. They have a lot of great resources on that as well. And that telework content often went hand in hand with posts that promoted active modes as a means of improving health and well-being. So encouraging us all to take our little daily walk around the block. So obviously recreational walking, biking, and rolling can be healthy for both teleworkers and people who aren't teleworking. but we often emphasize its usefulness in the context of being stuck at home and chained to your computer. So looking forward, and I'll talk about a little later, is our hope that those who've taken up active modes for purposes of health, well-being, recreation, can begin to see it as a viable and attractive means of transportation. So to any destination, but in the context of this presentation, especially as a potential commute mode for those who are not going to continue teleworking 100% of the time. So if we can get them on a bike for those days that they're going into the office, rather than in that single occupancy vehicle, that would be great.
So next thing we're going to talk about are frontline and essential workers. These are terms that the pandemic has newly introduced into our vocabulary. While the definitions probably were pretty loose at first, they have certainly clarified and been narrowed down over the past year while we've been in this situation. So the question we should ask ourselves is, what do these terms mean and what is the difference? So as you can see, these groups are largely categorized by job sector, but the big difference between the two is the ability to do that job from home or not. So for example, an EMT could not do their job from home, while an administrative public works employee likely could, but both jobs are necessary for the everyday functioning of our societal overall structure. So as you can see in this graphic as well, it'll list off some of those essential critical infrastructure sectors that are important to keep in mind. And the next question is, what are the equity implications here? So I think most importantly, certain underserved groups overlap with the frontline and essential demographics. And that includes people of color, older adults, women, individuals from lower income households. And this correlation is beginning to be recognized, and it's actually beginning to be integrated into more of the decision-making around planning and policy making in Oregon. So a great example of this, you'll see on the right side of the screen here, comes from the Oregon Legislature's BIPOC caucus, who cited this demographic correlation between underserved communities and frontline and essential workers as a means for equitable and also effective vaccine distribution. So that leads us back to the mass shift to telework plus this new understanding of frontline and essential workers. So WTA's Commuter Kickbacks monthly incentive program. Back in September, we paired up with Commute Options' brand new Telework Perks program for a special challenge honoring both sides of this workforce demographic. The challenge encouraged all types of employees to log their trips, whether they were working from home or reporting to a work site. And we drew winners for both groups based on modes logged. It was a really popular challenge, and there was a lot of sort of renewed excitement for these types of commuter rewards programs.
And to further acknowledge and support those people in our state who don't drive a car, which happens to be about 1/3 of us, the OHA was following CDC guidelines, and the guidance was changing about distancing on public transit vehicles. And we were trying to make sure that our riders who depended on transit to get to their essential work jobs were able to safely do so. So there was a lot of scrambling last summer for plastic barriers and masks and hand sanitizer and roping off seats so we make sure that people weren't sitting too close together. And I was honored to be part of a group of grant reviewers who distributed the CARES Act funding to a lot of our transit providers in the state. And that included public transit providers, nonprofit, government, and also for-profit like Greyhound. So we distributed almost $50 million to help our transit services continue throughout the pandemic. And While personally, my public transit service retracted and quit doing Saturday service and maybe cut some routes or cut some times, we are fully still connected by transit across the state of Oregon, which is really, really awesome for those who don't drive a car.
All right, so I'm gonna quit sharing for just a moment here so that we can launch this next poll question. If Brad would like to cue that up real quick. We can talk about this other question while we transition into part 2, which is what we're doing moving forward. Thank you, Brad. So we'll go ahead and take just a couple minutes here.
Well, that's the old question.
Oh,
one moment.
The man behind the curtain.
there we go. All right, so go ahead and answer that real quick, and then we will discuss.
Hey, and Maddie, we weren't able to see the results last time. Can you show them to us this time?
I believe I can do that. Yes. I'm not sure if Brad makes that possible.
If we're ready to end the poll, I can do that and then do that sharing.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and do that. All right. So this is very interesting. Looks like hybrid is the winner here. That's something we've been hearing a lot of many folks who were introduced to telework. Some didn't like it, but a lot of people did. But of course, there is that value of heading back to the workplace. And so why not both? And it looks like there's quite a bit of answers here for unsure, which is also pretty interesting. Because a lot of things really are still up in the air, and a lot of people don't quite know what their near future is looking like for their work situation. And so it's really important that we all remain flexible, especially in our planning and programming, just knowing that a lot of folks still are unsure. Go ahead and go back to sharing my screen. Okay, are we all seeing this? Awesome. Moving on.
So we've kind of reviewed what we did, and now we want to talk about what we want to do or keep doing. And in light of the answer to that question, which is many of us are unsure about how we'll be working and going to school, we're kind of planning for both at Commute Options. So we help kids K through 8 get to school safely by walking and rolling with our Safe Routes to School program and our walking school bus, which pays an adult leader a stipend for walking groups of children to and from school on a planned route. And we put that program on pause, but now that our Central Oregon school districts have welcomed students back to school 5 days a week, sometimes 4 days a week, we are hoping to reinvigorate that program and get those groups walking. In fact, we have a May 5th walking school bus to Bear Creek Elementary, which we're very excited to be hosting. And then this May, we have a walk and roll challenge month that Whitney Bennett, who you may have viewed earlier this morning, put together to win sweet prizes. So we've got kids rolling and walking to school. If they are doing distance learning, we're encouraging them to take a 20-minute walk or roll and log that trip. And then we'll be gathering up all of that information and awarding blinky lights and gift cards, and it's a light up scooter. Whitney, you can chime in the chat and explain what that awesome prize is, but we do have materials in Spanish and English. We're very excited to have our school partners be willing to print a piece of paper actually and put it in a backpack like the old days, which is really fun. Because we're all trying to kind of get back to feeling okay and feeling normal about where we're going. So yeah, thank you, Whitney. It's a light up scooter and a bike. So thanks.
And one of the things we did during the pandemic and we're going to do moving forward is that we kind of doubled down on biking. I'm sure in your areas, in our area, I saw more people than ever biking, either as a way of recreation, getting around, a way just to get out and do something since there wasn't a lot going on. So what we've done is create more digital challenges than we would have had normally, and something we're going to continue doing, using the Get Their Oregon tools, so trying to capture those folks that are maybe new to biking or were biking for recreation or more often during the pandemic, and trying to capture them, engage with them, and see if we can keep that behavior going forward, give them information on how they could potentially explore bike to school options, bike to work options, biking to the grocery store. So really trying to engage that new group of bicyclists that we were seeing. Other things that we found out to be popular were, we had very little video editing skills on our staff, but we developed it during the pandemic. I think we were all forced to be creative. So we created this all things bike video series. So we had a couple of topics that we knew we wanted to touch, but the rest of them were open kind of feedback questions from the public and our community saying, hey, we want to see a video on bike mechanic or these kind of basic skills classes. So we created those. There was some great support from the community and something that we had a lot of fun doing and a lot of interaction again with the public. So it's something we're going to keep doing moving forward. And also we expanded our bike donations program. So pre-pandemic, we had a donations program where we accepted bikes from the public and we fixed them up and donated them to veterans. We ramped that up, but on top of that, as most of you are aware, it's really difficult to get a bike right now from a bike store. I think in a lot of bike shops, the backlog is like a few months to almost a year. So it was really important for us to try to cycle affordable bikes in the community. So we asked for donations from the community, and we work with social service agencies to get these bikes out to families and out to other folks that weren't able to get their hands on a bike. So we found that to be a pretty worthwhile program.
Hi, Julia again. Yes, like Adam was saying, we also see this potential to nudge those who've taken up walking and cycling for recreation during the pandemic to use those modes as a means of transportation, following this big bike boom that has left us all without parts that we need for our bikes. And a great place to start with that effort is coming right up with May is Bike Month. So May is Bike Month has been recognized nationally for some time. It's been celebrated here in the Eugene-Springfield area for, I believe, 7 or 8 years. And the city of Eugene is the convener for this effort. But it's an effort that really includes a lot of different regional agencies and community partners offering all kinds of great free online and in-person COVID-safe events, socially distanced rides, classes, trip logging rewards, things like that. And so we're participating in that, both by just promoting all of the general great stuff that's going on through our various communication channels, but also by one, communicating with our employer transportation coordinators, who are our contacts at local businesses, to hopefully open the conversation around how employers can support employees in choosing active commutes as we're approaching this idea of people returning back to the office. And also, secondly, offering bike tune-ups to just a handful of our employer partners who have frontline workers who've been traveling to work this whole time, including those who work in grocery, manufacturing, social services, areas like that. And secondly, once it becomes safe to encourage people to return to transit for non-essential trips, because for the time being, we're basically saying essential trips only on our buses, LTD will also be launching a ridership campaign. So we'll thank those who have been loyally taking our buses for their essential trips this whole time, but then also welcoming back riders who may have stopped using transit for a variety of different reasons. And hand in hand with that general ridership campaign will be messaging, education, and outreach, which emphasizes active modes as first and last mile solutions. So this is on the slide here, I just have 2 examples of the kinds of amenities we would probably promote, like the racks that we have on our buses so that you can bike to the bus, or the secure electronic bike lockers we have at some of our stations, just to make it clear how active modes and transit really work together in a multimodal streetscape. I apologize for the noise in the background.
Oh, that's me. So we developed some resources and are continuing to flesh out work from home wellness tips for people, ergonomic seating, how clutter in your workspace makes you lose focus. You know, it's a lot of aha moments of things that we already knew, but we don't think about anymore, perhaps. And so as we do start going back to work sometimes, or maybe settling into that work from home job, we're making e-newsletter content and really leaning on our participants and get there to, to find out what people need to be more successful as they are changing their commute. ODOT has almost 5,000 employees, and 1/3 of those people have been sent home permanently. And so for a big government agency to show such leadership in changing the way we report to work, we can really expand our minds about how folks can get their jobs done.
Yeah, and we can only, obviously we can only really speculate at this point about what exactly the commute landscape is going to look like moving forward. But, most survey data suggests that a large portion of those who are currently teleworking will continue teleworking, at least in some form, even if it's not full time. So that majority of people on this call who said they were going to continue working in some kind of hybrid formation, something like that. So looking ahead, we're continuing to, use our social media to offer support to teleworkers, promoting its benefits. We're going to provide more regular communication with our ETCs as they support their employees who continue to work remotely or maybe transition to a hybrid situation, which is going to be new. And then thirdly, updating our employer transportation coordinator toolkit and our website to really broaden and deepen the resources we have, both for teleworking and any kind of alternative work arrangement. Sorry about my cat. In all
Let's see it.
Oh no, that's why I got the background up. You don't have to see this situation back here. So in all 3 of these areas, we're mindful, we have to keep a holistic picture of how post-pandemic teleworking and flexible work schedules might not necessarily lead to reduced vehicle miles traveled. It's not a necessary relationship between those 2 things. So I'd be open to, generating ideas about how we might, through our messaging, help mitigate those potential rebound effects. And I will let my cat out now.
I love how there's a cat purring while we're talking about working from home. So appropriate. So echoing what everyone else has been saying about the evolving landscape, Get There has really put a focus on kind of another branch of what we do, and we're calling that the Get There Business Forum. So we're kind of taking advantage of this newly engaged audience. In this case, it's employers, as they navigate, the return to work or not. And so the Get There Business Forum is basically a resource for employers. And we have been curating some tips that we've been pretty active on our LinkedIn for work from home and employer focused tips. So the one that you see up on the screen is Zoom fatigue, which I'm sure we can all relate to. So there are just some tips for dealing with that. So a lot of those types of graphics we've been coming up with and sharing. And then we also have an employer newsletter called The Shift, which if you're interested, you can sign up at getthereoregon.org. But this is just a collection of the latest news, expert insights, and useful tips and tools enabling successful remote work practices.
All right. I let the meowing cat out, but he's probably just going to want to come right back in. So we'll see how this goes. So moving forward, we're shifting now to talking about how we can continue prioritizing frontline and essential workers. And in the near future, we're really looking forward to renewing our efforts to supporting and promoting shared modes for those who can't work from home. So over the past year, our agency has done, has really taken a health first approach to reducing bus occupancy, requiring masks on buses, instituting rear door boarding, suspending fares, all of that whole, array of interventions. But part of that has meant encouraging shared modes only when it's strictly necessary. So what I've included here are some specific examples of how we can provide support for those who continue using shared modes for their commute. One is one that we've already done. So LTD reinstated fare collection in February of this year, once we were able to install those plexiglass protective barriers that Kim was talking about around our operator cockpits, and resume front door boarding. So to ease the transition of paying fare and to encourage contactless fare payment, for the first 2 months of fare collection, we offered free monthly passes to anyone who is using the TouchPass app or the card to pay for their ride. We also offer highly discounted bulk transit passes for employers in our area. And for many essential workers, this is really an important benefit. It provides them an affordable option for getting to work. And unfortunately, because of the ongoing economic hardships a lot of businesses are experiencing, it's increasingly difficult for employers to offer this benefit. So we're hoping to reinvigorate our efforts to expand the program and encourage employers to enroll, sort of as a secondary way of supporting frontline employees. The student transit pass plays kind of a similar role. K through 12 students can ride for free in our district. And so for many parents, that gives them much greater flexibility and makes transit an even more affordable option for them. So we'll continue to work with schools to make sure parents and students are aware that this option exists. And one program that has really taken a hit through the pandemic is our Valley Van Pool program. So this program is a joint effort of several agencies in the Willamette Valley to subsidize the cost of van pools. So the van pool, if you're not familiar, is essentially like a mega carpool. So it's 5 to 15 riders who travel a long distance to work. So like Eugene to Salem is one of the van routes that we have. And for a variety of reasons, the number of vans participating in the subsidy program decreased really dramatically over the last year. And so, we had initially continued to subsidize the vans that paused operations, but as the pandemic really dragged on, it became clear that it was best to just cease operations of some of those vans entirely. So moving forward, we're planning to work with our partners in the Valley Van Pool Partnership and our vendor, Commute with Enterprise, to really try and reinvigorate our effort to restart those vans or form new vans, because these can be a really great affordable option for people who travel long distances to work, especially with the subsidies that we provide. And then the last shared mode I have highlighted here is good old-fashioned carpooling. So through the Get There Oregon platform, as Sydney mentioned, users can plan trips, compare travel options, participate in rewards programs, but also find potential carpool matches. So that's what this is, a screenshot of someone using the platform to find a potential carpool match. And so thanks to our grant funding from ODOT, we can also assist employers in setting up their own networks and Get There so their employees can find carpool matches among their own coworkers. So moving forward, we hope that we can work with more employers in promoting that to their employees so that they can really enjoy the savings that carpooling can bring. And that'll coincide with efforts to work with employers to increase awareness of the Emergency Ride Home program, which is also administered through the same platform.
So last I want to talk about equity-focused incentives. In WTA's work moving forward, we are using what we've learned about frontline and essential employees to incentivize healthy commuting practices more equitably. Our existing community-based rewards program will now offer additional incentives specifically for the frontline and essential workers in our Get There network, and also our soon-to-be rolled out program, Commute Champions. We plan to do the same. We were able to identify these folks primarily through an online survey, which was actually through the Get There platform. And we plan to distribute similar surveys on a regular basis just to make sure that we're not missing anyone who self-identifies. Plus, since WTA does primarily work with its membership, we are able to conduct outreach and marketing using print and paper materials through certain work sites, which do have higher numbers of frontline employees. And that is something usually indicated by job sector. So for example, a member of ours is Columbia Sportswear, and they have different types of facilities across the region. The manufacturing sites, however, will have more frontline and frontline workers in particular than say call centers, since manufacturing cannot be done from home, while usually call center type positions are a pretty good fit for telework. And that makes work sites like these better candidates for print outreach rather than digital. And this can help us reach and identify more frontline workers throughout our member sites moving forward.
And Julia mentioned the Valley Van Pool system, and over here in Central Oregon, we have people who live really far away from the places that they need to go for work, and not as frequent or geographically available bus service. So a van pool is really a super awesome tool for a smaller group of people to get to and from work. You can see our graphic has masks. Yes, Commute with Enterprise suggests that people wear masks in the van pool. And through our statewide transportation improvement fund funding in Deschutes County, we have a pilot van pool subsidy program that we pretty much ripped off from Valley Van Pool. So thanks, Julia, for that. Great idea. Our transportation options family is tight, and we will always steal each other's ideas. So if you know of anybody, we rolled this program out in Deschutes County in August of last year, and I have nobody taking that subsidy yet. So if you have any leads for me, I will take them. Additionally, I mentioned the May Walk and Roll Challenge in our schools, and I'm kind of stealing that idea from Whitney and adding that to Get There. So anybody in the 17 counties that Commute Options serves can walk and roll their way to prizes in May.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to cover is, as you all may be aware, Southern Oregon had a really devastating fire this past September. the Alameda Fire, which ripped through Phoenix and Talent here in Southern Oregon. About 2,600 homes were destroyed. Anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 folks were left unhoused and lost their belongings. So one of the ways we responded and helped this group, many of whom are frontline essential workers, is working with the different social service agencies and providing bus passes for these people to get to important appointments, getting them where they needed to go, and making sure that they were taken care of as far as transportation. Since the pandemic, we've had several different programs, which I believe are part of the STIF program, providing low-income bus passes to different social service agencies. Another program we created was a service worker bus pass program. As businesses were disrupted by COVID, we knew we wanted to provide an option that they could offer their employees with discounted bus passes. So we created this really easy, simple to fill out form where businesses can enter their business type, how they were disrupted, and kind of self-categorize that they do have frontline essential workers, and we could provide them with a 50% discount on our transit passes. And then finally, touched on the community bike drive. We have people here at RVTD that manage our bike program, and currently do it for veterans, where we give out those refurbished bikes. But we are going to be having a larger community bike drive in June, again, recycling and getting cycling bikes throughout our community. Usually we have this really large event in Southern Oregon called the Bike Swap, where we of course get people donating bikes and get folks kind of putting up their bikes for sale. They're affordable, low cost. It really allows our community to access this important mode of transportation. So we see this community bike drive as a way of again getting a good stock of bikes. We could work with social service agencies and get these bikes out to people that need them.
All right, that is all that we have for you today. Here's our contact information once again. Let me see, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. There we go. And we do have about 6 minutes for some questions or comments or anything anyone would like to share. So please feel free to just put something in the chat and I'll read it out.
There is a question from Paul.
Oh, great.
Paul, you want to unmute and ask your question? Or I can read it too. Oh, we can't unmute. Okay, thanks, Shane. So Paul wants to know, with the prevalence of telecommuting, do you think there's space for corporate commuter benefit programs to join advocacy coalitions for safe streets? Panel, do you have thoughts?
I think part of the hope of just speaking with Providence, who's one of our, again, another large employer hospital system down here in Southern Oregon. And we had worked with them a bit on the teleworking kind of programs as we set up those resources this past year. And there's a lot of interest in getting more involved in transportation. So, as we build these partnerships, I think there'll be more opportunities to get them involved in some of this other work.
And I will say I'm a part of a county bike and pedestrian advisory committee, and they did a campaign to recruit new members, and they had like 45 applications for people to be a volunteer on this board. And it was, I think people really woke up about how they want to spend their time and contribute to their communities. So getting involved in that way and making policy and funding decisions in your municipalities is a super way to get your streets on the right track. Colin has a question. Colin says, first, how would a local government go about collecting data about residents who telecommute? Second, how might it change its review of traffic studies? I will give a plug for expanding the eco rule session tomorrow, which is a presentation at 11:30, talking about employers of a certain size, travel surveys, and transportation demand management, trip reduction programs being required by administratively by the Department of Environmental Quality. So I would encourage you, Colin, to tune into that session tomorrow. And then I wonder if anybody else has any thoughts on how might it change review of traffic studies if we've got people working at home. Anybody?
I mean, I think it's a really excellent question, and it's something that, I mean, I don't know a whole lot personally about traffic impact analysis and those kinds of things, but I am aware that, as I mentioned earlier, there's not necessarily a relationship between increased telework and reduced vehicle miles traveled overall in the course of someone's day. If, for example, they're replacing their commute with many smaller trips out to go run errands or things like that, and are not trip chaining, things like that. So I think it's a really important question to ask. And also when we're looking at things like flexible work arrangements and alternative work arrangements where people are able to arrive at work at different times of day, it might reduce peak hour traffic volumes, but overall that might kind of mean that there are more people actually driving at different times of day. You know, it can be, I think, more complicated than we like for it to be. And it'll be different than it is right now because people will be doing so many more things, traveling to so many more places. So I think it's a really good question. We did have a planner jump in and tell us that it won't change the way that cities review their traffic studies. I'll let that person remain nameless. But we'll, you know, I guess it remains to be seen. I'm not a planner, but interesting to see.
So it looks like there was one final question in here, and then we can wrap up. So this question asks, how do we balance the teleworking and equity issues for people who do not have reliable internet or a computer setup? Should they still be allowed to come into the office? That's a great question. Let me see. So I know Sydney can speak to the webinar that Get There had offered during the challenge about optimizing Wi-Fi, but that is, of course, assuming that one has the equipment needed for that. Let me see. So if anyone has anything to chime in, I can try to answer it best that I can.
I would just add, so we did a survey with our hospital system here locally, and it showed at that time there was about 80% of folks wanted to continue teleworking post-pandemic, but of course that's not everyone. And so I think part of that is first gauging your employees, making sure that these are options that work for them. And I think in the second question we asked the audience was kind of how do they plan moving forward, and it probably will look like a hybrid situation where there is space in the office for people that need it. Again, people's home situations are different. Some people have kids at home, or for whatever reason they like working at the office. So I think that's that part where you're engaging your employees to figure out what works for them, and that I think goes for any time. Like I think that's what's one of the beneficial one of the benefits of the transportation surveys we do with employers is we can identify barriers to transportation or getting to work that maybe the employer doesn't see.
Yeah, commute.org org did a really great 3-day kind of summit thing on hybrid working. And some of the panelists there were talking about trying to avoid creating like a caste or class system where people who come into the office have certain benefits that people who don't have, and or vice versa. So I think the equity issue gets complicated when you have people working in this hybrid setup where some people are coming in and some people aren't. So that'll continue to be something we'll need to think about as well.
Are there any other last minute questions before we log off for today? On behalf of the Street Trust, I just want to say thank you so much to our presenters. We know that this conversation is just beginning as we think about the future of work, of workplaces, and how we recover from COVID. So Maddie, Sydney, Julia, Theresa for being on call, Kim and Adam, thank you so much for your sharing your knowledge and insight with our attendees today. Thank you to our sponsors who are listed on the SCED conference website. Thank you for coming and enjoy the rest of the summit. We've got Team Telecommute here too, so everybody give your pets a hug who've been putting up with you while you're working from home, and enjoy the rest of the summit. Take care, everybody.